Hey guys, welcome to the Beyond Sunday podcast, where we help take your faith beyond Sunday and into your everyday life.
I was going to do the intro because I haven't done the intro in like 4 weeks.
Go ahead, do the intro.
Wait, can I do the intro?
No.
I don't know the intro.
You get your own podcast.
Hey,
to do
everybody.
the intro.
No.
Go.
Hey, welcome to the Beyond Sunday podcast, the podcast where we're helping you take your faith beyond Sunday and into your everyday life.
And then sometimes occasionally go on to very interesting and engaging tangents by which we spice up a little bit, and you get to learn a little bit more about your podcast host.
This is true. My name is Chael Branda, and I serve as the executive director here at Trinity New Life Church. I am joined by my always co-host, Pastor Clayton Bell, lead pastor here. And today we are joined by Collin Hoke, the New Life Students Director. And Collin, since you're here today and you want to help with the intro, how can our viewers and listeners join with us throughout the week?
Telepathically. No, you can. So we are on the socials. So we've got some Instas. You can do Trinity New Life. Just
this
follow
is really a test to see if he knows all this information.
He knows.
And then you can email podcast at Trinity New Life. There's always a great way to, send your questions in or connect or whatever. Am I missing anything?
No.
Okay.
Colin is also
praise
the
Lord.
co-host of the wildly popular Meet the Leader.
Wow.
Meaty Leader
podcast on the
Meet the
podcast
Leader
network.
episode on the Beyond Sunday podcast.
Yeah,
That's
where
what
she
my
hosts
host
with
sounds like.
Sam Bills, right?
Leader.
Yeah, because she's a Michigander, Michiganite, Michiganorian.
I'm sorry, Sam.
Yeah, so that's happening, and so we wanted to have Colin on, not because the table was still set up for 3 people from last week. I just figured it would be
Part
easier,
of it, though.
but because we wanted to make sure you're integrating into the Beyond Sunday, the podcast worlds of sermon recaps.
We have a network.
And
Trinity Life
I
has
actually
has
have.
a
I've been
podcast
thinking
network.
about that a little bit, and so I think there's a way to take the platform of a dozen or so listeners that we have and really diversify that across multiple podcasts. I think that would really be.
You guys all get your own podcast.
Yeah,
That's
Spotify
it.
just paid $250 million for the Ringer podcast network, and so I was just kind of
Really?
like, there's got to be
Okay.
Really?
$4 to $5 beyond Sunday.
$4 to $5 every 4 years.
Yeah, that's something a little bit. That's an interesting, like the future of podcasting and how that's working in the.
In the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, but this, what we're doing on this podcast is we're doing a little bit of sermon recap, and then pressing in a little bit with that. And so, Colin,
Yes.
can you give us a 30-second recap of the message?
Yeah, the message was all about how do we follow or worship God in our rest. So we're in this series
19
called
seconds left.
167, and it's about how do you spend too much. But how do you use all of the hours in your life that you're not at church to honor God? And so one of the ways that we talked about yesterday was to use our rest. How do we use the way that we rest to honor God? Because God actually commands us. He calls us to rest. It is not, and you used a scripture where there's like murder and all of the other things,
Disobeying
and
your
then
parents.
disobeying
That's
your
the-
parents, right? But then
That'll
also
stick with me.
rest in the midst of all that, and just how seriously God takes our rest. So what does it look like to Sabbath? What does it look like to obey God in the command to rest?
That's that passage. They profane my Sabbath days. Profane. And just as a resource, I forgot to mention, I had it written down in pen on my notes and then didn't say it in any of the messages. So here's Beyond Sunday. You want to go beyond Sunday and into your everyday life. Write this down and check out the book, The Art of Rest by Adam Mabry, friend of the show. Friend of the pod, friend of the church. He's actually going to be coming and not preaching on that, but he's going to be preaching at TNLC this fall.
Nice.
I wrote a book called The Art of Rest, and that's kind of that scripture is really what launches out the book. They profane my Sabbath days. And then another book, which Colin, you're reading right now, which is a little bit of a different. It's not just about Sabbathing, which Adam's book is a
Right.
lot more on that.
Yeah.
There's a book called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, which is from the Dallas Willard quote that Kelly gave last week by John Mark Comer. Give a little bit of a summary of that book that you've read so far.
Yeah, so I'm about 4 or 5 chapters in.
I thought you were going to
pretty
say
pointless.
pages. I really thought you were going to be. I'm like 4 or 5 pages in.
It'd be really pointless to be reading that book and be like, I got to get this book done as soon as possible.
So here's what the book's about. It's about the ruthlessly eliminating her. But it really is that. It's all focused on. So I just kind of got past the first portion of the book where it's like, what's the problem? And it's really the idea of like, actually one of the Dallas Willard quote. I don't know.
Hurry?
I think so. I think that's what it is.
Spoiler alert.
I don't know if this was in Kelly's quote, but he does quote Dallas Willard where he says, like, basically the great enemy of American spirituality is
Right.
hurry. It's not pride. It's not like currently where we are now. It's just the fact that there's so like our lives are literally dominated by hurry. Everything is just I got to go. I got to do the next thing. Got to go. I've got all these things to do. So yeah, it's just a really great look at. I'm kind of now transitioning into the portion of like, so how do we solve the problem? So I don't have a ton to tell you on that one. I just know that there is a problem. And
there's a problem, and you're going to read how to solve it.
Yeah.
Does he cover like this idea?
You can sell books if there wasn't a problem established that the book needed to solve.
Fair enough.
Does he cover the idea of like instant gratification in the culture that we've come up into? I'm curious. It's on my list of books that I want to read. I just haven't gotten.
It's
quite
really
to it yet.
good so far, and I suspect it's going to be pretty practical too. I just get the feeling that they're just kind of I've looked through kind of some of the chapters
pages.
as well. Yeah. So I think there's going to be some pretty practical stuff, but I don't know. Maybe not super explicitly. I think it's there in the background. I think that's a big thing. Is that. That's just such a it's so easy to instantly gratify so many things.
I mean, everything is at our fingertips. So I mean, we can do this all the time with
which you would think that
things.
would cause us to not hurry, but that's not the case.
That's not the case.
It actually increases
right.
the amount of choices you think we would gravitate towards less. We wouldn't I don't need all these options. The more options we present people, the more they need it. And when it comes to having options, a lot of people have options of how they can quote unquote relax or rest. And that's one of the things we pressed into yesterday was that rest is not always the absence of activity.
Right.
Rest is restorative and rest is refreshing. That's the way that God created us, was that we would press into relationship with him. Even the quote from Exodus chapter 20, where God is giving the law to Moses and he's kind of outlining the obedience to the Sabbath. He says that you do this in the name of the Lord your God. So to be able to have a day where you just did nothing, you never connected with God, you never refreshed your spirit, you never refreshed your soul, that's not a Sabbath. That might be a lazy day, but that's not a Sabbath day. And we have to make sure that we're in rhythm of being recharged over and over again, and not just we almost treat it like a roller coaster. Like we should be in rhythm on a regular basis. I touched on this a little bit towards the end of the message. Really I feel like almost the last point had maybe 2 or 3 messages inside of it. But the idea that if you have to take more than a day off, like I'm constantly needing, I need 2 or 3 days away or 2 or 3 days away. My body is breaking down. My mind can't handle it. I'm not talking about I have vacation, or we talked about the difference between vacations and trips. And
Very
the difference
clear
between those
definitions
two.
around here.
By the way, you guys did a great job on YouTube last week commenting on what WWE superstar you thought lived with Kelly and I in college. Nick Watts was correct. It was Lana. Her real name is CJ Perry. And so she lived with us in college for a little bit. And then you didn't listen to that podcast there, Collin?
Nor do I know who Lana is.
That's good. Don't Google her.
Good. Okay, got it.
But here, comment below the last place you took either a vacation or a trip, and let us know which one it is. What's the last place you took either a vacation or a trip, and let us know which kind it is. Because vacation, again, kids don't go on vacation with you. It's a trip. But the idea of
wait till your kids get a little my last vacation was Paris, and we did have a kid with us, but it definitely was a vacation.
You let her have an Instagram account, so she was like, I'm fine.
I'm good, Mom. I'm good.
There's so many filters.
When they get older, you can start to have vacations with your kids.
And you really have to examine, which I think is the difference of like, okay, look, I've put the Sabbath rest in my life, but I'm still running. I still feel like my RPMs are always there. I think that would be probably where you have to press into this idea of the ruthless elimination of hurry, because you might be fully engaging in the Sabbath rest, but the type of life that you've built in the other 6 days is still unsustainable, and you're asking too much from that Sabbath to refresh and restore you because you're living unhealthy and out of bounds in the other 6 days. So just because you're establishing a day of rest, a Sabbath day, does not mean that you need to leave the rest of your life unexamined. And I just think that that's a important distinction. Some of the questions that we got were about balancing the two of those, balancing rest and laziness, the Mary and Martha. So I think that's one of the places we can start even talking about that application of, yes, establish your Sabbath, but if that doesn't work, that doesn't mean that you just need 2 Sabbaths or 3 Sabbaths. Sabbath-I?
Sabbath-I?
Maybe you need to start examining the rhythm and pace of the other 6 days and see if that's sustainable and God-honoring as well.
Right. And I think that's when probably my biggest struggle when it comes to taking a Sabbath is the idea of during the 6 days that I work, how much am I allotting to work here? Because I obviously I'm a 40-hour, I have a job, a career like that. And I have a home life where I work. I'm still mom. I still have chores to do there. I still have things to do there. And so when I find myself out of rhythm or out of balance, it's because I have either pushed too hard into my church work or too hard into the mom. That when it comes to a day for me to Sabbath, I'm still having to think through all the things I haven't gotten done throughout the week because I didn't look at my time and I didn't look at the allotted freedoms and things that I hadn't gone, oh, I would much rather sit down and binge watch 2 episodes of whatever on Netflix instead of going and mopping the kitchen floor. So then on Saturdays, I'm waking up going, oh, well, I haven't done this for this week. I haven't done this week. So then it's 1:00 on a Saturday when I should have been resting and I'm trying to knock off all of the to-do lists, and I've just lost that day. And it really comes back down to how I manage my own time. Like, I am an active participant in my life. I can control this, and so how to just kind of do that.
Yeah, okay, so just because that ties into one of the questions that we got, and I just want to go ahead and jump into that now. I was asking a question of, can you talk a little bit about that laziness does not equal rest with respect to the recharge portion? Because in some cases, it's a robber of rest because the time that you should have been working or getting something done, you were being lazy, like you said, during the week. So because I'm letting this pile up and go, I'll get to it on my day off, I'll get to it on my day off, then your day off becomes checking out a to-do list. And if you were able to be a little bit more diligent and a little bit more focused in the other 6 days, and got stuff done, then you'd be able to more fully enter in to that rest. And so again, what you can't do is go, oh, well, I got to my Sabbath, and you either do the entire to-do list, that takes you the whole day. Now you haven't actually rested.
Yeah.
Particularly if you're somebody who needs a lot of stopping in the what recharges and refreshes you, or you get to it, you look at this huge to-do list and go, well, it's my day off, it's my Sabbath, I'm not going to do that. So then that piles up and continues to roll downhill. Now, if you're married or you're living with roommates, you might be robbing them of their ability to rest because they're seeing all the things that need to get done and you're going, I'll get to it. It's like, but you haven't gotten to it yet.
Right.
And I need you. Like, I think, I was joking about the Mary and Martha, again, which could be another whole message.
It really could have been.
That God's the God of both Mary and Martha, and there are times to be Mary and times to be Martha. And Martha's problem wasn't that she was a get things done kind of gal. It was that she was missing the moment where she should have paused from some of that activity to press in to sitting with Jesus. And Mary was probably the one who was just kind of like, well, Jesus is, leaving. Maybe I should just follow him instead of being like, well, no, we still got responsibilities. Not that we should ever let Jesus leave. The analogy falls down. Okay, just
follow the first part there. You're good.
This is also the first time Collin, I think, is recorded on a Monday while there's childcare behind that wall. Yeah, and I think he's being worried that the kids are actually doing a WWE.
There's been a few like wall hits.
You're like, is that blood that I hear gushing?
There's no screaming yet. There's no screaming yet. They're fine. They're fine.
Yeah. But I do think that is really important to consider. What's the rhythm that you're putting in so that you can actually maximize? Like I talked about, I schedule my vacations.
Right.
Where's my read day? Where's my workouts?
Right.
Where's my this? Where's my that? That gives me so much more engagement going into it.
And I think that I love what you just even referred to. Like if you have roommates, or in our example, we've got teenagers who are fully capable of like cleaning their room and doing their list of chores, and they love to wait until Saturday and suddenly mom's home and during the week to do things, and they're like, oh, can we go do this, can we go do this, can we do this? And I'm like, well, no. I was like, you haven't done your chores all week long. And they were like, but and I was like, they can prevent me from taking a Sabbath because now I have to push into what and to have that conversation of even like, well, when you are living in a family, when you're living in a home, when you have roommates, you have other people depend upon you, like how important is our responsibility to allow them to Sabbath as well? So can we take responsibility for the things that we're doing in order to help the other people have that rhythm and get that rhythm kind of in their life? So
yeah, Pastor Russ Austin in Jacksonville was telling me about a book he was reading, and it was a lot about the psychology of how you actually can build willpower. You don't just, you may be starting with a certain portion of willpower, but whatever it is, it's like anything else, you can exercise it and you can build it. And it was this mentality of anything that you can just do in either a 30-second or a 3 minutes. Do it now.
Get it done. Yeah.
And he said he was kind of looking around at these dishes and he's like, this is going to take too long. And then he was like, wait a minute. Alexa, set a timer for 3 minutes. And he went and did the dishes. And he's like, it took me 3 minutes and 2 seconds. And he goes, that would have just hung over me the whole rest of the day. And it was like, I can get it done now. I can get it done. I can get it done now.
That's really
good. Of course,
good.
there's the opposite way where you can never stop. But there are these little things that if you can just knock them out, then that allows you you do it not because there's this, I have to, and if I don't, the world will collapse, which is a lot of what we pressed against in the message. But hey, if I get this done now, it's going to give me this freedom in this other portion of time.
And when we talk, again, I think everything we're describing right now goes to this idea in which you said in the message about how we have to do violence to our schedule. This is what violence to the schedule looks like. This is where you look, when you are looking at the moments, the time, and you're like, oh, this is only going to take me 30 seconds, 3 minutes to do right now. Can I do it right now? Yes. Like, be active in that. Like, you can't just, I'll get to it later. Sure, like maybe, I don't know how long this is really going to take me. Oh, that's a 4-hour project. Yeah, it's like a 5-minute project. Come on. Like, let's just get it done and move on. So
yeah, it takes me 1 minute, 60 seconds to set the coffee the night before, to pour the water, to scoop the coffee. For some reason, it takes me 7 to 8 minutes in the morning. So if I set it the night before, it takes me like no time at all. There's been so many times before I go to bed at night where I'm like, I don't want to do the coffee. And I'm like, all right, now let me pour the water, scoop it in, set the timer.
Right.
And then if I don't do it and I get up the next morning and I go to do it, for some reason it takes me like 7 or 8 minutes to like, where's the water? How do I dump it? Where's the trash can? Did we move it?
You moved the refrigerator, Kelly.
Yeah, it just is like.
Why did the fridge get moved last night?
Or that's the morning the dog's going to wake up early, different things. Like, it's just amazing. Like, when I just knock it out the night before, how much more time I get the night or the morning afterwards. So do you have any routines like that where you're like, like any time-saving routines?
I've started to try to remember to do the coffee thing. And I do that like about 45% of the time. I remember
45% of the time it works
every time.
But man, you wake up and you're like, this is just, you just go and pour it in so easy. I'm really bad with time-saving routines. I fall way too easily into this, like, I'm just gonna figure it out in the moment. Like, I'm just like, when I get there, I'll handle it then. So I think where
it's the most
some
Enneagram
people
7 thing you've ever said.
I mean, I think yesterday when some people were like, "Oh man, this is just such the sermon for me," it was probably because they're like kind of like the workaholic, like
you're like, I'm still listening to that work one. Actually, I haven't gotten through it yet.
I'm like, I think Kelly's was good, but I'll listen to it. Yeah. No, but I think I'm just on the other side of, I'm probably more like the rest comes back to bite me because I rested a little bit too much here and left the whatever that needed to get done. And so now I'm finding like when I do actually need to rest or want to rest, and I'm like, crap, I got to do that. Or
okay, that was the other reason I invited him on the podcast. Now you know why
Collin came on the podcast. Because we were Clayton and I talk about this. It's going to be very different.
This is very, very opposite. Well, I will say I sat next to Paige in 2 of yesterday's 3 services.
And how many times did you hear this?
Here's the thing. No hms, no nudges, no nothing. She was really good, but
you knew what she was thinking.
But then we went on to lunch. And
what did you think of that?
So what did you get from it? A lot, babe.
What stood out to you in this message today, Collin?
We do still, again, standing invitation for Paige to come on. We don't have this many microphones, but if we did have standing invitation for Mike Branda. Kelly's been on the podcast. She'll keep coming back on the podcast. But I don't know. I feel like I just walked in and was like, Collin, we already have it set up for 3 people. You want to come? And you're like, yeah, okay.
I mean, I checked my calendar.
Jessica Johnson just went.
Wait.
It's Jurassic Park. If I don't move, he can't see me. Sharon went, nope. And Sam just was like, I didn't even hear what you said.
After you left, they were plotting to like all walk in here and be like, we're ready. Like, you thought we weren't gonna.
Yeah, maybe we'll break it. Maybe we'll have the guest of the week and let them know what's taking place. Hey, if you want to hear us interview one of your favorite leaders. No, I'm just kidding.
That would be nice if they,
I learn something every time when I listen to that podcast because you just did one with
Jessica Johnson was the most recent
and
one.
I knew a lot of it. I do feel like she forgot a lot of her story, where I was constantly calling out destiny and purpose and ministry in her life. But
whatever, she got it all perfectly correct. Chael reached out to me. I joined Chael's discipleship group. I was like, yeah, Jess, keep preaching that one.
Saying I was the one who'd asked her what she was doing with her life,
and then walked away for 6 months.
Okay,
there wasn't a position.
See, this is why if you're listening now and you've not listened to the Meet the Leader podcast that came out last Friday, you need to go back and listen to that episode with Jessica Johnson.
And
you know what?
I don't need you to tell me that it says episode 96 and it's actually episode 97. I got it. I know. Don't worry about it.
Anyone actually know that?
I don't know.
Like,
I did, and I
who's
thought
the
I
person
re-edited
that's counting
it.
that?
I edited it.
Yeah, because I record them.
Hey,
I don't know.
stay on topic.
Sorry. No, well, what I was going to say is, you know what the Meet the Leader podcast really allows you to do?
Laugh.
Yes, but also rest. You know why? Because you don't have to do anything after the Meet the Leader podcast. There's no call to action. It's just come, listen, learn a little bit. So I'm just saying, it's you can really put this sermon into practice by listening to the Meet the Leader podcast. Meet the Leader podcast.
Great job on the enunciation of all the syllables and all of the words.
Syllables.
Okay, so we got one question, and then I answered one already.
You already answered one.
And then I'm going to ask you guys some questions. So that's when we're going to maybe diverge a little bit from the message and go into some just personal application time.
Deal with it.
So a lot of this is a question talking about someone kind of understanding their own rhythm of life and knowing that they function best in their emotional state when they have gotten rest in the evenings. They work a full-time job, but they've got kids, spouse, TV, all the stuff going on, and they were trying to take some time away, but their spouse is a big quality time person, so they kind of felt neglected in that. And so, what was their, advice of how do you, I know how valuable this is for me, but I know how it's appearing to somebody else. I'll give a quick answer to this, and then anything you guys want to say to jump in, because this is your first time hearing the question, and I didn't want you to just answer. I think you have to have a conversation and be able to give some level of compromise and say, listen, I know you really love quality. I'm like, I did this like, oh no, the camera. Like, sorry, I just was like, oh no, I'm afraid you guys are over there.
It's been there the entire time.
That's why I was laughing at myself. But I think you have to have a compromise and a conversation to say, listen, I know yours is quality time. That time can become quality time rather than just time with you if I can have a little bit of this. If I get a little bit of this first, then the time I'm with you, I'm going to be more engaged. I'm going to be healthier. I'm going to be more focused. I'm going to be more present with you when I've had a chance to be able to have some of this time. So I think that's the conversation. The compromise may come in, look, can I get 15 minutes? If 30 minutes is too much, an hour is too much, like, look, can I just get 20 minutes? We put 20 minutes on the clock. I'm totally fine with that. Maybe that grows. Maybe that wanes. Maybe there's some days where it's like, you know what, babe, go ahead and take some extra time. Or, hey, is there any way tonight we could do this? But I think if you were able to come to a compromise and say, listen, I'm going to kind of set a timer for this. It's not going to be this open-ended time. I'm going to really try to dive into this. But in exchange for that, I really believe that the time that we spend can move from just time spent to quality time spent, because I know I'm going to be in a healthier place. We had to do that with our Saturdays. I want to go work out every Saturday, and Kelly wants us to wake up and either have pancakes or waffles as a family every Saturday. And kind of looking at the way our schedules was going, she just kind of sat down and said, look, I need you here. I need you here on Saturday mornings. If you have a coach's meeting or there is something that, like there was a baby shower 2 weeks ago. I was like, can I go work out? She's like, yeah, no problem. Because she wasn't going to be home anyways. But we compromised on that. And I said, okay, but if that's the case, then I need to make sure I'm getting in this Monday workout. So are you okay with this? And she's like, yeah, I would rather have you here Saturday mornings than you having to come home 30, 40 minutes earlier on a Monday night. And so because of that conversation, we were able to figure out what that compromise was.
That's good.
Would I rather be working out every Saturday? Yes, but I understand the larger part of what I've got to be able to commit to my family.
I think that there's something to when you can open up the communication between you and your spouse about the importance of all the things. There's something about the times when you can, in those moments, be like, I had this time in the morning, so this evening, you know what, I'm going to push into time with my spouse. If this particular person knows the spouse's love language is quality time,
Right.
that quality time is going to mean so much more to that person when they know that this, like, if you were to go home on a Monday and surprise Kelly with dinner, she knows that you're giving up of your time that she's already given you to do what you need to. So that quality time is going to mean more.
Right.
And so to understand, and I can't even begin to stress how important the compromising is. Like, you say one thing, what do they need? And open yourself up to understand that it doesn't always have to look the same either. Sometimes your 15 minutes might be while you walk the dog around the block, because that'll give you time to pray today. And maybe it's not opening the Bible and reading through some scripture for 30 minutes. Maybe this is like, don't put restriction on what this has to look like for you every single day. Maybe you have an ideal, but work up to an ideal as you're slowly working and ministering to your spouse in these times. I think that it is like we do this. It's very similar in the idea of on Saturdays in particular. My first question to Mike is, what are your expectations for me today? Like, what do you want? Like, do you want to go do this together? Do you want to? And if he's like, oh no, I don't care, then I know, okay, well now then I'll tell him, like, okay, well, I'm gonna go spend an hour on the back patio, I'm gonna be reading this stuff, like, blah, 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 let me know. Or he'll be like, you know what, I just want some quiet time. Can we go for a bike ride together? Can we go do this together? And I'm like, okay, so that's gonna look a little different today, and make those adjustments. But it comes back down to the idea of communicating it and like really making sure you're having conversations and being open to listen to what they have to say, because it's a very different communication conversation that you're going to have when you're like, listen, I have to have an hour every single night to myself. Where am I going to get? If that's the case, if you're going to walk in and be like, I have to have an hour, well, guess what? Your hours might be from 11 to midnight, because that's the time when all your family's gone to bed, and you have to be okay with that if that's really what you need. Like, there was a season in our life where I was like, I needed this, and so in order to work into the day, I had to wait till everybody was in bed, and then because that's what I thought. I'm air quoting that thought I needed at that time and stuff. And so you have to be willing to listen. And if there are things that you don't feel like you can compromise on in this situation, then it comes back to you and your schedule, and you have to figure that out while giving, while erring on the side of love and thought to your family and stuff. So,
Collin, you and Paige are different in personality. Been married,
and a lot of other things.
Yes,
just about everything.
Gender, hair color,
height,
beard,
pregnancy.
All the things.
I don't know if Paige. I just kind of was like, oh yeah, you're pregnant. I was kind of like, wow, that's a big shirt on her. Oh, pregnant, baby bump. Got it.
Yeah, it's actually there.
It's not a cheeseburger. That's Collin.
Hey.
He's like, all right, thanks.
Whatever. That was Collin's joke. And that is Collin's joke all the time. I'm not calling him out on that.
It's okay. Multiple times I've just pointed at it and been like, I did that.
All right. So enough of the Meet the Leader podcast there, Cletus. It's an inside joke to the Jessica Johnson Meet the Leader podcast.
You'll have to listen.
So you guys, I don't know. I'm like, Collin, you and Paige are different people. There's nothing to do with that on the sheet. But what? That's why you got to watch the YouTube. What have you learned in 4 years, 3 years, 4 years of marriage?
This year will be 4.
Okay, so coming in this summer.
Was that the question? Are we done now?
Did I pass? Am I pass?
Oh boy.
What have you guys learned in how you both individually rest, and what that looks like for the two of you together to figure out, here's what I need and here's what I don't need? Because your schedules, you might have more of a regular routine schedule, but Paige's is not. She might have, you can't just say Saturdays, you can't say Sundays.
Yeah.
That's got to be all different.
That's been really difficult. That's like, we've learned the importance, and still learning, but we've learned the importance of being intentional with how we schedule ourselves. And being on the same page with that as well.
Paige is a nurse, by the way,
yes.
in case most people don't know.
She's a nurse. She works
7 to
12-hour days,
7.
7 to 7, a few days a week. But that fluctuates. That changes. Some days it's a Monday, Tuesday, and then a Friday. Some day, like it kind of it rotates all around. So she's able to choose that. She can schedule herself, but it's still like it's just kind of all over the place. So, yeah, we don't have a ton of consistency. So we have to make, one of the things that that we're getting better at is making specific time to sit down and just look at. So you talked about syncing calendars. I think you mentioned that yesterday.
Yeah, he did.
That's been really important for us to actually sit down and say, okay, what do you have coming up? Like actually getting, so that I can open my calendar. I can see everything that goes on with her. So we don't even have to like sit down and look. Like I can just check and be like, oh, she's got this baby shower she's going to or whatever. So I think the importance of that is actually having the time to sit down and plan out, okay, when are we doing a date night this week? When do I know that Paige is going to be out? So then I can schedule, okay, so that's going to be my time to just sit, relax, be alone, because that's really helpful for me. So I think just having those times where we can sit down and figure out what does this actually look like, but that takes a lot of intentionality. I always want to just be like, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out when we get there, like, which is never, ever.
Is she more of a meticulous planner?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So when we went to Paris, we've gone to, have you been to Paris? No. Okay. So when Paige and I went to Paris, she's a nurse, remember? She did all of that, like the like day to day. We're gonna do this. She did. She loves it. She sat down and did that. I was just like, we're gonna be in Paris. Like you just walk around Paris. So that's kind of her thing. Like she loves to have the plan. She loves to figure out all the little details of it. Whereas I'm a little more go with the flow.
But was there ever a point where you're like, all right, this is enough with the planning? Like, why can't we just enjoy this? Or was it like, hey, that's fine. That's how you process?
I think, I don't know if we've ever had a time yet where it's been like, okay, enough with it. Because I feel like that's kind of something I'm cool if
Paige, it sounds like it's coming. Not yet.
Not yet.
What's today? No, not yet.
A few months. I don't know. Maybe our next vacation. We'll see how it goes. But I don't think it's gotten to the point yet where it's been like so much. I know that when she knows that there's a plan, because I also understand that plans can change, and she's been pretty good about like in the moment being okay with like a change of plans and being okay with like, okay, this is like, we planned this, we said we're going to do this, but now we're here and what do we want to do here and changing this plan. She's able to do that. So I think that's kind of our compromise is, you can plan, but we also need to be willing to kind of make adjustments based on what's ever best for the situation.
Yeah. Chael, when do you said Collin said he hasn't had that time yet with Paige. When do you think that you'll learn to slow down and rest?
Collin hasn't learned how to have it.
Colin hasn't had that argument with Paige yet, so I was wondering. He knows it's coming in the future, so I was wondering, in the future, do you think you'll learn how to rest and slow down?
I have learned slowly but surely.
We were having a conversation yesterday, and we were both like, "Oh boy, we're really bad at this. We got to stop." I just preached a message on this. We'll just stop it.
Just stop. I actually, honestly, probably in the last 4 years I've been on staff-ish here. We have really intentionally, we look at our Saturdays as a church to make sure that we're not scheduling anything that's not of an incredible value for what we're doing. And that internal work, like not work theology, but work mindset, has helped me.
Vocation?
Yes. But that just has helped me learn how to rest properly. Because when the work calendar was allowing for that time, then it was when I would work 6 days a week and I would have this one day and my husband would be like, "Stop working. You've already been working. Like there's nothing happening today." And I was like, "Oh, that's right. Like this is why we're doing this. This is why we put this day in here so that we have this time. I really need to be able to push into this like day of rest." And so it has. We do I would say the majority of the time, like there's not a ton of work conversations happening on a Saturday. There's not at all like any
Unless
expectation.
It's, hey, I have the flu. Can you guys talk to each other?
Or a like, hey, we put the road sign out on 54 on Saturdays. So Saturday mornings,
when there's not construction
when there's not construction going on. And we're like, got it. And it's like, that's it. And knowing that it's not just my rest day, but it's everybody else's rest day. For me personally, that helped me because one of the things that I really do take passionately is making sure I want to make sure Mike has a rest day. I want to make sure my kids have a rest day. I want to make sure our staff has a rest day. I want to make sure you have a rest day. I want to make sure you have a rest day. So when I realized, when I realized that, oh no, this is worked in our calendar so that everybody can rest, and that includes me, that was a much better shift. For just in these last, it's really, and we can talk about this, it's really hard as a mom to have a Sabbath and a rest when you are mom, especially small children 24/7. But as my kids started getting older, I started really developing this pattern of something that I needed in my life. I realized I did have to change my mindset to understand that my rest matters for the other people too. And when it suddenly, and Mike said this to me at one point in time, it was like, he's like, you're not resting. It's not making anybody else rest. And I was like, but that's the whole point of me doing all the things right now is so that everybody else can rest. This is counterproductive. That helped me a ton. So I do, and we will have this last weekend was an example. We had a really crazy weekend. We just had a lot of things happening. And so I'm running away to Denver for 3 days because why not, but it goes back to the intentionality. Somebody said this to me, and I've said this on the podcast, and I'll probably say this 100 more times on the podcast of we are active participants in our own lives. Stop waiting for everything to just happen to you. No, don't
stop waiting on the world to change.
Right. Stop thinking that, I'll get to a Sabbath someday, unless you're putting it on the calendar.
You and your best friends are sick of pretending, then you don't have to pretend anymore.
There you go.
If you want the truth, read your Bible. Read your Bible.
But you two are horrible.
I just said
that.
We're just speaking Hillsong Young and Free lyrics so that the algorithm of YouTube will pick up our views and search engine results.
Surprise at all. But that's just really I have learned it is always a process for me. For me personally, actually getting out my work calendar to allow for it was super helpful. And then to have people tell me, for me personally, understanding that in order for everybody else to rest, I have to rest too, was huge. For me to have just a mind shift or brain shift or thought shift. That's the word I wanted to use. Thought shift of how we look at Sabbath. What about you?
Yeah, I think one of the things that is helpful here is that we all do take the same day off. The staff does not have the option of taking Monday's going to be my Sabbath. And I've been on a church where some people Sabbathed on Monday and some did it on Friday. And I was like, It threw everything off. So you basically only had 3 days in the middle of the week where everybody was in the office. And so you were kind of incomplete in all the work you were doing. And it really threw everything off. It's one of the reasons we do so little on Saturday is because I don't think it's fair for the pastor and the staff to say, I'm going to take Friday off or I'm going to take Monday off. Most of the congregation cannot do that, and then to load up the days they're supposed to be taking off with work because they're work days for us.
Right.
That's why Saturday has always been a break day. Now Friday is a little bit more lazy for us. It's not as everybody in the office till 5:30 and then punch out because of the rigors of Sunday. But that's even why we've loaded up Sunday with some meetings. So learning how to be able to do that, that's changed in different seasons of my life. I think that's one of the questions and things you always have to ask is what is it in this season of life? I think physically you change. I think emotionally you change. I think the season of life you change. So it's all very different. I'm getting better at kind of seeing hey, I need to take a break here. I need to take a day here. But honestly, the growth of the church has helped that. The fact that we have staff helps that. Where when there was times where I'm preaching 48 of 52, 48, 49 Sundays of 52, hey, take the week off. That either means I'm writing 2 messages in 1 week before, or I'm writing 2 messages in the week after. Hey, somebody else can do that. These things always have to be done. And before there was nobody else to do those things. Now there are people who can do that. So it's a lot easier to hand it off. And that's the thing is you got to know in seasons of time, everybody's in different situations. I think it even would be, if you're interested, if for the moms out there, I don't think Collin and I have much information to be able to share. If you're interested, I don't know, how do you Sabbath when you're a mom? Send that question or ask it on Instagram, and Chael will do an Instagram story giving you her suggestion and advice on that.
Actually, there's just recently, this is a big conversation had online, and there's a blog, and I'll share it. Yeah, and I'll share the post that was this is a really good, talking directly to the moms of small kids and how they work in Sabbathing. And I was like, I wish I had that when my kids were littler. I mean, it is hands down. It's much easier when you have a bunch of teenagers. But yes,
let me explain this.
Collin, let's talk about rest when you got a puppy. That'll be our conversation, and it doesn't happen. Right. So, all right. So that is, we're almost crossing into the 40-minute mark. So we're going to go ahead and stop. That's our conversation on rest and taking that message and applying it deeper into your life. Ask the conversations, do the hard work, figure it out so that you can be fully engaged in those 6 days. So you can be fully engaged in resting, a restorative, replenishing, refueling rest during those times. So again, podcast at Trinity New Life. If you have any follow-up questions, Instagram, Trinity New Life. If you have any questions, Colin, any closing thoughts? Chael, any closing thoughts?
If you are on YouTube, go ahead. Don't forget, we want to know where you last vacationed and where you last took a trip. So let us know those
which one it was.
or which one it was. Yeah. And if
Smash that like button, subscribe.
If you are looking for Sabbath questions specifically about your routine, send them in. We'd love to continue this conversation.
Also, the new thing is hit the bell. You got to hit the bell for the notifications.
If you hit me, I will punch you.
Hit the bell. Fair points. Have a great week, everyone. Bye-bye.